Lady Eleanor Harrington pressed against the cold stone wall of her chamber, her wedding gown catching on the rough surface. Outside, her father's voice bellowed commands to the servants. Tomorrow she would be wed to Duke Weatherby, a man 30 years her senior with a reputation for cruelty. Her fingers trembled as she grasped the small scissors. With each snip, long golden locks fell to the floor. She gathered her meager belongings, a locket from her mother, a few coins saved in secret, and men's clothing stolen from a footman. The dogs began to bark in the courtyard below. She had been discovered missing. There was no time left. Eleanor slipped through the window and into the darkness. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Your comment helps our community grow stronger. Thanks, and let's get back to the story. Eleanor ran until her lungs burned and her silk slippers were torn to shreds. The fine clothes of nobility were not made for flight through forest and field. By dawn, she had put several miles between herself and her father's estate, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The Duke had connections throughout the county. She would need to travel far beyond his reach. 3 days later, Eleanor stumbled into a small frontier town, her feet blistered and her stomach hollow with hunger. She had traded her diamond earrings for a worn pair of boots and trousers in a village 2 days back. With her shorn hair and dirt-smudged face, she could pass for a young man. Slight and inexperienced, but a man nonetheless. The general store owner barely glanced up when she entered. Eleanor cleared her throat, attempting to lower her voice. "I'm looking for work, sir. Any ranches hiring?" The storekeeper snorted. "Morgan's place might take you, though you don't look like you could lift a saddle. 5 miles west of town. Follow the creek." Caleb Morgan was inspecting a broken fence when the stranger approached. The young man was too clean-faced to be a drifter, too well-spoken to be from these parts. Something about him didn't sit right, but Morgan was down 3 hands since the spring drive, and cattle wouldn't wait for perfect help. "You ever worked a ranch before?" Morgan asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Eleanor shook her head. "No, sir, but I'm willing to learn. I'm a hard worker." Morgan laughed, a rough sound with little humor. "Hard work ain't the half of it. What's your name, boy?" "Eli, sir." "Eli Smith." Eleanor winced at her poor choice of alias, but Morgan seemed not to notice. "Well, Eli Smith, I don't usually hire greenhorns, especially ones that look like they'd blow away in a strong wind. But I'm short-handed, and we got 300 head to move next week. Bunkhouse is yonder. Jeb'll show you what needs doing. You get meals and $2 a week. You steal or slack off, you're gone. And another thing, I don't abide fancy folk. Had enough of their kind to last me a lifetime. Their word ain't worth dirt." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." That night in the bunkhouse, Eleanor lay rigid on her narrow cot, terrified her deception would be discovered. The other hands paid her little mind, assuming her reticence was shyness or stupidity. Only old Jeb, the weathered foreman, offered any kindness, showing her how to properly roll her bedding and telling her to be at the corral at first light. Dawn came too soon. Eleanor's body, pampered by 17 years of aristocratic comfort, rebelled against the demands of ranch work. Her hands blistered within hours of gripping a rope. By midday, every muscle screamed in protest. But she did not complain, did not stop. Each painful moment was still preferable to the fate she had escaped. "Show me again," she asked Jeb after failing to secure a saddle properly for the 3rd time. The old cowhand raised an eyebrow but demonstrated once more. "You're a strange one, Eli. Most young bucks too proud to ask for help. You talk like you had schooling, too." Eleanor flushed. "Just some, sir. From the mission." Jeb didn't push further, but his gaze lingered thoughtfully. Days blurred together. Eleanor learned to rise before the sun, to ignore her aching muscles, to ride well enough not to embarrass herself. Her hands calloused, her skin bronzed. She kept to herself, volunteering for solitary tasks whenever possible to avoid scrutiny. Bathing became a midnight ritual at a secluded bend in the creek, always in darkness, always in fear. Morgan rarely spoke to her directly, but she felt his eyes tracking her movements, evaluating. Unlike the other hands who teased her mercilessly about her slight build and smooth face, the rancher's assessment was cool, calculating. During the 3rd week, disaster struck. A flash flood caught several cattle at the lower crossing. Without thinking, Eleanor plunged her horse into the rising waters, guiding panicked steers toward higher ground. She worked alongside Morgan for hours, risking her life repeatedly until the last animal was safe. As they dismounted, exhausted and soaked to the bone, Morgan turned to her. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Smith. His voice was gruff, but something had shifted in his gaze. Probably both, sir. Eleanor grinned despite herself. A corner of Morgan's mouth lifted. Get some dry clothes before you catch your death. You're actually proving useful, and I'd hate to have to break in another greenhorn. That night, for the first time, Eleanor was invited to sit near the fire with Morgan and Jeb as they discussed ranch business. She listened intently, offering a suggestion about rotating grazing that seemed to surprise both men. Years of accompanying her father on estate inspections had taught her more than she realized. Where'd you learn about land management, boy? Morgan asked suspiciously. Eleanor tensed. My father had a small farm before we lost it. Lost it how? The bank. Then illness took him. She looked away, hoping the lie seemed plausible. Morgan's jaw tightened. Banks and their fancy friends, always ready to steal what a working man builds. I know something about that. His voice had grown cold. Later, Jeb found her alone by the corrals. Boss don't take to strangers usually. Must see something in you. But tread careful, Eli. He's got no love for the gentry. His family had good land once, till some English lord bought the banknotes and forced them out. Caleb was just a boy. Watched his father work himself to death trying to start over. Eleanor's stomach twisted with guilt. She thought of her own father, of the casual way he discussed foreclosures on tenant farms when harvests were poor. She had never considered the human cost of those business decisions. As spring turned to summer, Eleanor found herself included more in the daily operations of the ranch. Morgan began teaching her about breeding stock, asking her opinion on purchases. They worked side by side mending fences, her suggestions respected, her presence seemingly welcome. In quiet moments, she caught herself watching him. The strength in his hands, the rare smile that transformed his stern face, the integrity evident in everything he did. Is their family waiting for you somewhere, Eli? Morgan asked one evening as they sat on the porch after supper. No, sir. No one waiting. He nodded, contemplating the sunset. Man ought to have something of his own. Land, family, purpose. What about you, sir? Eleanor ventured. No wife? Morgan's face darkened. Was engaged once. Martha Billings, preacher's daughter. Pretty, kind. Then Lord Hampton's son came through on his grand tour of the territories. Turned her head with promises of Europe and fine gowns. She broke our engagement, followed him east. He never married her, of course. Used her and left her ruined. I'm sorry, Eleanor whispered, genuine pain in her voice. Morgan shrugged. Taught me a valuable lesson about the aristocracy. All the same, them and their kind. Think the rest of us are just here for their amusement. Every word was a knife in Eleanor's heart. She had never considered herself cruel, had even fancied herself kind to servants. But had she truly seen them as equals? Had she ever questioned her birthright to privilege? The worst moment came a week later when Samuel, a young hand who had always eyed her suspiciously, proposed they all ride into town Saturday night. Gonna get you proper introduced to Daisy at the saloon, Eli. Put some hair on your chest. Eleanor panicked, inventing a sprained ankle to avoid the trip. But she knew her excuses would eventually wear thin. Her secret could not be maintained forever in such close quarters. Then, on a sweltering afternoon as she worked alone in the furthest pasture, she spotted a cloud of dust on the road from town. As the riders drew closer, her blood froze. At their head rode her father and Duke Weatherby, accompanied by the sheriff. Eleanor abandoned her work and raced her horse back to the ranch, her mind whirling. They wouldn't recognize her now. Tanned, dressed in worn work clothes, her once soft hands rough with calluses. But the Duke had resources. They would be offering rewards, asking questions. It was only a matter of time. She found Morgan in the barn. Mr. Morgan, riders coming. Gentlemen and the sheriff. Morgan's expression hardened. What business would they have here? Eleanor could only shake her head, her throat tight with fear. The men arrived with a flourish, Lord Harrington's expensive mount and the Duke's gleaming carriage incongruous against the working ranch. Sheriff Taylor made the introductions as Morgan stood stone-faced. We're searching for a young woman, the Duke said without preamble. My fiancée, Lady Eleanor Harrington, disappeared nearly 2 months ago. We have reason to believe she passed through these parts. Morgan's posture remained rigid. No ladies here, fancy or otherwise. Just me and my hands working cattle. Lord Harrington produced a sketch. She may have disguised herself. Headstrong girl, foolish notions. an enormous reward for information leading to her safe return. Morgan barely glanced at the drawing. Like I said, no women here. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got work. The Duke's face flushed with anger. You'll mind your tone, rancher. Do you know who I am? Morgan's eyes narrowed. Don't much care either. As tensions escalated, Eleanor retreated to the shadows of the barn, her heart pounding. The confrontation ended with threats from the Duke and a cold dismissal from Morgan. The visitors departed, but Eleanor knew they wouldn't go far. That evening, she slipped away to the hilltop overlooking the ranch. She should run. Continuing her deception endangered everyone who had shown her kindness. Yet the thought of leaving filled her with unexpected despair. She didn't hear Morgan approach until his voice broke the silence. Those men. You know something about why they're here? Eleanor startled, then slowly nodded. It's me they're looking for. Morgan's expression remained unreadable. Figured it might be. You're too educated for a drifter, too refined despite your best efforts. What did you do? Steal from them? No. The denial burst forth before she could stop it. Eleanor took a deep breath. I'm Eleanor Harrington. I ran away because my father arranged my marriage to the Duke. He's a monster. 3 wives, all dead before 30. Morgan's face transformed, disgust and betrayal hardening his features. Your nobility? His voice was ice. I was born to it. I didn't choose it, Eleanor pleaded. I chose to leave it. You've been lying since the moment you arrived. Playing some game, laughing behind my back? Morgan's anger was palpable. No, I've never worked so hard. Never been so honest about who I truly am inside. This life, the work, the purpose. It's real in a way nothing in my previous life ever was. Morgan turned away. I want you gone by morning. Eleanor felt something break inside her. Please, I'll go, but you need to know they won't stop looking. The Duke wants my father's lands. He won't leave without me. Not my concern, Morgan said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. That night, as Eleanor packed her few belongings, shouts erupted from the yard. She peered out to see flames licking at the edge of the barn. Outside, several mounted men, the Duke's hired guns, circled the property. The message was clear. Surrender the girl or face destruction. Without hesitation, Eleanor grabbed her father's old hunting rifle and ran to join the ranch hands who were forming a defensive line. She worked frantically alongside them to battle the fire, even as bullets splintered wood around them. In the chaos, she found herself back-to-back with Morgan, both reloading their weapons. I never meant to bring this trouble to you, she said over the din. Should have known you were too much trouble for a ranch hand, he replied, but there was no malice in his tone. Just get through tonight. We'll figure the rest later. By dawn, the attackers had been driven off, though at a cost. The barn was damaged, and 2 hands wounded. As the ranch folk tended to the injured and assessed the destruction, Eleanor made her decision. She found Morgan by the corral. I'm going to turn myself in. This is my fight, not yours. Morgan studied her for a long moment. You saying you'd go back to that life? There a reason you picked my ranch, Eleanor? She met his gaze steadily. I heard in town you were a good man who might not ask too many questions. And now I know you're the best man I've ever met. Far better than the so-called gentleman of my class. Something shifted in Morgan's expression. Got a friend who's a judge in the territorial court. Owes me a favor. Might be he could help establish you as a free woman, beyond your father's control. Hope flickered in Eleanor's chest. You'd do that? Even knowing who I am? Morgan's hand moved to cup her cheek. I know exactly who you are. Hardest worker on my ranch. Smartest, too, though don't tell Jeb I said so. As for the rest, titles, land, that's just circumstance, not character. The Duke won't stop, Eleanor warned. Neither will I, Morgan replied. Then, with unexpected gentleness, worlds changing Eleanor. Her father and the Duke raged, threatened, and finally offered bribes. But the territorial judge was unmoved. Under frontier law, Eleanor was declared a free citizen, entitled to determine her own fate. Outside the courthouse, Morgan waited with the wagon. As they drove back toward the ranch, Eleanor's future stretched before her. Uncertain, difficult, but truly her own for the first time.